What's going on, everyone? My name is Andrew Allen Frisch. This is the Nutrient Health Project podcast. You are listening to episode number 5, and we're going to talk about creating some clarity of thought. Before we get rolling into that, my purpose with this podcast, because we're still in the less than 10 episodes part of this, my purpose with the podcast is I basically look at the health and fitness industry and I see a lot of things that are either way too complicated, or they're way too simplified, or they're just out and out like not good advice. So I want to take my experience. I've been personal training, nutrition coaching, strength coaching, with in-person lessons, with online, we've got people in multiple different states. I've been doing this for like almost 12 years now, and I want to help people and I want to impart the lessons that I've learned, and I want to give this information out for free, and just hoping that it hits people, and hope, that it helps people who are either plateaued in their weight loss journey or their muscle gaining journey, or just living a better life journey. And I want to help move you forward. So I have to say, it feels like it's been a couple of weeks since I have recorded an episode, and that's because it has been a couple of weeks since I recorded an episode. Prior to this, I had hoped to have a couple episodes out, and I actually recorded an episode, which would have been episode 5, with my buddy Joe, the Q&A guru, or the Q-ru, if you will. We did a great episode. It was like 45, 50 minutes altogether. I was really proud of Joe. I think that was his first time ever on a podcast, to the best of my knowledge, and he killed it. He did a great job. It was like he went from like my buddy Joe to like professional radio host, like over like the span of 3 seconds. And when I went back to go through and edit out, the uhs and the ums, that episode was gone. And I don't know if I'm sure it was an error on my part, user error. Somehow I deleted the episode, or I didn't record it properly or something, but it was not there. So sadly, that episode will never see the light of the day. It is gone to the ether, but that's okay, because that just means that Joe and I get to try and do that a second time. And we were actually having technical difficulties from the jump. I was wanting to get it as a video podcast, and I could not get Zoom to cooperate, or Skype to cooperate, or any of the different video apps to cooperate. But I have since figured that out. So when Joe and I, the Q-ru, and I do this again, we will be on video. I have been on another podcast. I was actually the featured guest on my buddy Alan Wise and his brother Cody Wise, their podcast, and it's called The Wise Asses. I will say that while I don't shy away from dropping the occasional, cuss bomb, the shits and the fucks here and there, that episode is populated with vulgarities. So if you listen to your podcasts with children or sensitive ears in the atmosphere, maybe don't listen to that one with them. But it is a great episode. Alan and Cody both bring some great questions my way, and we cover nutrition, we cover fasting, but we also kind of bullshit, because it's 3 guys talking shit to each other. So if you do want to listen to that, like I said, it's The Wise Asses, and if you just search my name, it should pop up. So and I do appreciate those fine gentlemen having me on their podcast. But let's get to today's episode. What we're going to talk about is creating clarity of thought. And actually, this would be a perfect segue, because I want to explain part of why I took about a 2-week hiatus from recording. And a brief part of that was going up to visit my mom. Holly and I went to go up to Michigan to go visit my mom, who, she lives alone, she's disabled, and she has 2 Chihuahuas. We were supposed to be there for about 5 days, and we ended up being there for about 3.5 days, because those 2 Chihuahuas that my mom loves so dearly did not stop barking for 24 hours a day. The only time they would be quiet is if there was absolute silence. My mom was in the room with them, the door was shut, and nothing else was happening. So, and just to give social proof of what we dealt with, what Holly and I dealt with, it was supposed to be our week off from training, and it was supposed to be a recovery week. And when you have 3.5 hours of this going on, 3.5 days of 24 hours of this going on, you tell me, how would you relax and recover with this? So I recorded this just to give some social proof. So here we go.
Stop. You're imprisoned in your box. What more do you want?
24/7.
Are you filming me?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, and that's like half of the video. I started recording it, and the second I started recording, one of the little buggers got wise and stopped barking. So that was only one of the 2 that were actually barking. But I've shown that video to a couple of our clients, and when I've shown that video to them, that face you get when you realize you've stepped in poop? Like, that's the face. That's the face that they give me, where they're like, "Oh no, God, no." So yeah, it was 24 hours a day, and like I said, we were supposed to be there for about 5 days. We ended up leaving after like the third and a half day, and it was just like, we got to get home, and we actually have to get some rest because we're going right back into another hard week. So that is a perfect segue into what we're going to talk about today, as far as creating clarity of thought. So let me minimize my head here on the video. And if you're not familiar with this, you can find these on YouTube under my username, Andy Frisch, but you are obviously able to find these as a podcast in and of itself. But let's get this presentation rolling. So, like I said, creating clarity of thought, and we're going to talk about cultivating clarity with the practice of journaling. Now, most people, if you're like me, when I thought about journaling before I started doing it on a regular basis, you would think of like, a teenage girl sitting on her bed writing into her diary saying, "Dear diary," and like, the brother comes in and steals it and reads it to his friends or whatever, and they fight and blah, blah, blah. But to me, journaling it's always been kind of a touch and go thing throughout, I don't know, probably like most of the last 20 years. And I would do it for a little bit and then stop and then pick it back up and then do it again. It's just kind of this repeated process where I never really did it for more than a couple days at a time. And it actually wasn't until I listened to I haven't finished, but listened to some of Matthew McConaughey's audiobook, Green Lights, where he talked about journaling, I want to say for more than like 20, 25 years, maybe even more than 30 years. But he talked about, all of these journal entries that he's had and the joy of looking back and seeing what he was like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, right? Because as we go and grow, if you're having the same thoughts today that you did 5 years ago, if you're having the same problems today that you did 5 years ago, or God forbid, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that's a pretty clear sign that you're not growing, you're not progressing through life, right? So the goal, at least for me and for anyone else who's trying to progress and do better in life, should be growth, should be new thoughts, should be new problems, should be better and bigger problems, right? Better and bigger thoughts. So by journaling, you can kind of go back and capture those and look back at like, wow, like I don't really think I've made much progress. It's kind of like taking progress pictures. You can go back and look at, I've been working out for 6 months and man, I didn't really think I lost much weight, but look at my pictures 6 months ago versus today. It's the same exact principle. You're basically taking a snapshot of what your thinking was like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even just 6 months ago, and see like, wow, shit, I forgot all about that. And I made it through that problem. That seems like it was 10 years ago, but it was just 6 months ago. So let me explain kind of a little bit outside of taking those snapshots, and we'll get a little more into that here in a second, but outside of taking those snapshots, what does journaling offer, right? Because again, at face value, it's not super sexy. Most people, like, you're not going to find an Instagram trending post on journaling, right? It's just not going to happen. You're not going to find a multi-level marketing program on journaling, right? Herbalife is not going to start selling a journaling program. At least I hope they don't. So it's, to me, we live in an age, of mass distraction, where we're bombarded with social media and text messages and emails and phone calls and probably less so phone calls than the other ones, but we have all kinds of things going all the time. Our attention is constantly being pulled in 5, 6, 7, 8 different directions. And I have clients who tell that to me, where they're like, I feel like I'm being pulled in 8 different directions, and I'm being stretched thin, and I never have time for myself. And if that's the case, if you have 2 chihuahuas that you're around all the time, but those chihuahuas are taking the form of text messages or emails or Facebook notifications that go off at 4 a.m. and wake you up for whatever reason, like, silence your phone, people. But if you have all of these things pulling you in every direction, it's hard to have clean, clear thoughts, right? So if you don't have clean, clear thoughts, how can you ever put together clean, clear actions that are going to move you forward? And like I said, I mentioned journaling kind of being a way to like capture the way your brain is working in a moment, in a snapshot of time. And to give you an analogy, one of the things I like to think about is like, imagine you went to a concert, and imagine we don't, and granted we do, but imagine you don't have digital music or CDs, which I guess we don't really have CDs anymore, but like, imagine you don't have a way of listening to music, and you go to a concert and the band plays a song and you're just like, wow, like it hits you right. Maybe it's just the right emotion. Maybe you went through a tough breakup, or maybe you're like trying to get focused to go hit the gym or whatever it is. And you just hear a song at a concert and it was just the right way. And after the concert, the song is gone and you have no way of ever reliving that song. It's the same thing as far as like journaling, where how many times have you ever had an idea or a thought and it's like, wow, that was a really good thought, or that was a really good idea, I should write that down. And then for whatever reason you don't, probably because, if you're not in the habit of journaling, why would you bother writing it down? If you don't write it down and then like 2 hours later, it doesn't even have to be a couple of days later, just 2 hours later, you'd be like, shit, what was that idea? I don't remember it. But if you're in the practice of journaling, writing these things down, capturing thoughts really quickly, then you capture it. And it's akin to going to that concert and recording that song and having it, that experience to always relive. That's one way that I use journaling, is just to capture some thoughts. My journaling practice every day, it's probably the third thing I do every single day without fail, right? There are meditation is a daily practice for me too, but like meditation may be something that I don't get to until later in the day. Like today, I got my meditation done. I think it was at like 6:30 this morning before my 7 o'clock client came in. Yesterday, I didn't get my meditation done until like 2 p.m. I was just off all day. But journaling, it's like we wake up, Holly and I take our vitamins and our minerals and all that good stuff to get ready for the workout. We will sit down, I'll do my planner, and then I journal. So it's literally like vitamins and minerals, planner, journal every single day. And I go for 10 minutes. And I'll talk more about like how you can get into this, where you can start, and how to develop the habit for yourself here on the next slide. But as far as like what it looks like for me, I sit down and I start every single journal entry the same. I just say, today I woke up at whatever time it is. And 99% of the time, that's 3 a.m. So today I woke up at 3 a.m. And then I'll kind of like really briefly review, like, Holly and I went to bed fasted, or Holly and I had a cheat meal last night, or Holly and I fasted and stretched before bed, whatever it might be. But I'm just doing a quick recap on what time I woke up today, and then I'm going to review like what did I do yesterday. So for me, that daily review that I'm doing in the journaling process, it allows me to assess what I did throughout the day. And in that assessment of the day, did I get the thing done that I wanted to do? Did did the day just, some days are like a roller coaster, right? You have the best laid plans and you know what you're going to do. And then before you know it, it's like, shit, half my day is gone and I haven't done a single thing that I wanted to do. So you can kind of assess how your day went. Did you get the things done you wanted to do? And by assessing it, you can then progress toward whatever the future goals may be. And those future goals, after I do my review for yesterday, I'll go into the things I want to do for the day. And that's like my short-term ambition, my short-term goals. And after I will do that, so it's literally review from yesterday for the first, 3 minutes, 4 minutes of it. It'll be plans for today for the next 3-4 minutes of it. And then big picture, I always kind of culminate the journal entry talking about what the big picture is. Like, what am I working towards? And again, what I'm working towards is trying to create this community, right? So that's my goal with this is to continue training people, to continue doing the nutrition coaching. But I get a lot of joy out of putting this free content out. And if any of this resonates with you, then I'm doing my job. So that's towards the end of those journal entries. I'm talking about seeing the following growing, right? Seeing the impact on social media and the listens from this podcast, seeing all of this grow. And just, again, knowing that Holly and I are living a life of health and wealth and abundance by giving service, by creating impact, and by giving back to others. Like, so that's what I'm finishing off the journal entries with every single day. So that's the main structure, right? Daily review of yesterday, daily plan for today, and long-term goals, long-term direction for the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years, right? 20 years sometimes. So outside of that, something else that will occasionally creep into the journal entries when I notice it in my thoughts is my personal narratives. And what I mean by personal narratives are the stories that we tell ourselves. So these can take many, many different forms. And oftentimes the tricky part here is that oftentimes the stories we tell ourselves are so natural we don't even realize that they exist. Right. So I don't know if you haven't heard of this, I highly suggest pausing the podcast right now and going to YouTube and searching David Foster Wallace, This is Water. In the beginning of that, he talks about these goldfish, and, two young goldfish are swimming along and an older goldfish swims by and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" and the two younger goldfish, keep swimming. And I'm paraphrasing, but the two younger goldfish keep swimming, and they're like, what the hell is water? So it's like, that's what our stories are. We're not even aware of it. It's just the things that we just, oh, I just don't like vegetables. I just can't stop eating sweets at dinner. I have to have a sweet before I go to bed. I'm just an introvert. I'm just an extrovert. I just like being the life of the party. I just enjoy going out and drinking on Friday nights. I'm not good enough to ask for a raise. Like all of these different things, I'm the center of attention, whatever it might be. All of these stories that we tell ourselves, you start to realize, like, as you capture them and put them down in a journal, you start to really get a feel for how truly malleable a human being's personality is, because you can then identify the things. Let's say you're an introvert, right? I'll use my wife as an example. She is very, very introverted around everyone except for me and people that she's extremely comfortable around. But if she were to desire to be an extrovert, if she wanted to be out and about, she's told me the story of one of her cousins who was also very introverted when they were growing up. And my wife saw her some years later, and the girl was just like super outgoing and super talkative. And Holly, like, got her to the side and was like, hey, like, what did you do? Because you used to be so introverted. Now you're just so outgoing. And I think it was her cousin's answer was like, I just didn't want to be quiet anymore. I didn't want to be that shy girl anymore. So she realized the story that she was telling herself, I'm introverted, and she flipped the script and said, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be outgoing. So that's not to say that it's going to be some easy transition. She probably didn't go from like super quiet wallflower to like, hey, everybody, check me out. But like, it's a process. You identify the story that you're telling yourself, and you try to realize, like, well, is that something that serves me? Is that something that's helping me move forward, or is that something that I need to change, and how can I go about changing it? So that's another thing that journaling will help you do, is it allows you to identify the stories and the narratives that we tell ourselves that we can change, right? I'm just an angry person? Well, can you work on being an angry person? If you don't want to, if you enjoy being an angry person and that serves you, be an angry person, right? If you're an introvert and that serves you, be an introvert. If you're an outgoing, energetic, life of the party person and that serves your career and your journey in life, then do that. But if there are things you want to change, you can start to identify the stories that you're telling yourself and how you can change those. Another thing that journaling will allow us to do is, much to the main point of this episode in particular, is clarity in thought. It allows us to find incongruencies in our thought and our action. So congruency to me is a really interesting word, and I was familiar with it, but before reading, I think it was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, I think it was reading that book is what really opened me up to the idea of congruency. And when I think of congruency, I have the mental image of a zipper pop up. Now that from first take might be like, what? But if you think of a zipper that's unzipped, right? It's two separate sides that are not in alignment with each other. And that's incongruent. So if you think of people who say they want to lose weight, but every Friday and Saturday they think, well, I did really good Monday through Thursday, let me reward myself with a brownie. Let me reward myself with a couple of alcoholic beverages, right? Or someone who says, I'm a vegan, but that means I can have pizza because as long as I don't have, meat or cheese on it, I can still have all the dough I want, or whatever. Like these little things where it's like you're not living in alignment with your actions. Journaling can help you kind of find those things. And sometimes it's tough, sometimes it's really uncomfortable. And that goes back to like why it wasn't a consistent practice for me for so many years, because I went through, like I said, like 20 years of drugs and alcohol and depression. And I would, in the mornings, I would wake up and be like, all right, like I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to get my stuff together. And I would, get all ramped up and motivated, only to be like 4 or 5 p.m. kind of like, oh, screw this. Like I'm kind of over it and I feel anxious and I want to drink or smoke so I can just calm down. And it was tough to every single day write in that journal about like, well, journal, once again, I fucked up and I didn't do the things I wanted to do. So sometimes that congruency, identifying where we're being incongruent, can be kind of uncomfortable. And if you go back to that zipper idea, as we identify those incongruencies, now you're starting to like close that zipper, and now you're starting to have thoughts, and you can identify those actions and start to kind of zip those together, so the things you do throughout the day match the things you think and feel and desire, right? So that's building congruency. Now, how do you journal? So actually creating clarity. What does this look like? So for me, this, I couldn't tell you. I would have to look back at my journal. I'm not going to stop the podcast to find that right now, but I've been doing it consistently for months now, every single morning without fail. So I shouldn't say that. I may miss an episode, good Lord. I might miss a page. I might miss a day, once every 3 weeks or something like that. But I don't let it become a second day. I've not missed 2 days in a row of journaling since I've started this as a dedicated habit. The way I started doing this was overkill, right? As I am known to do, but I bought multiple, either bought or like dug up books and little like notepads, and had one here, which is like my living room table, which is my work table. I had one here. I had one in the kitchen table. I had one by the side of the bed. I had one in my car, and I had one in my backpack. So anywhere I was, if the thought and desire to journal struck, I was able to write. And I even put reminders on my phone to go off. I think it was at 10 a.m., 12:30 p.m., and at like 4 p.m. So if I hadn't done it first thing in the morning, one of those reminders would go off, and wherever I was, I would write. And ideally, that's the way I set it up. Now, in truth, none of those reminders ever did me any good, because I just started doing it as a morning habit, right? It's a great way to kind of like clear the slate of the day before, because we might wake up and we've got, all right, I got to do this and this and this, and you've got all of these things taking up your mental bandwidth that you have to do for the day. And then maybe you have some things taking up your mental bandwidth for like, what did you not get done yesterday, and why didn't you get it done yesterday, and what about that thing that person said to you at the grocery store? Why the hell did they say that, right? So it's a good thing to start the day, at least that's the way I look at it, with journaling right from the top. However you want to do it, whether you want to use an app or set out different books around your apartment or have one on you at all times, to me, there's something just kinesthetic about pen and paper and just writing things down. But if an app is the best way for you to do it, then use an app, right? Like you can text a thought to yourself. You can use any of the note-taking apps. I mean, I don't need to go into super detail on all of the different ways you can do it. It doesn't really matter. But I would say create the place that you think you're most likely to do it. Again, whether that's journaling at your kitchen table or typing into an app on your phone in a parking lot, whatever it is, but create the way that you know you're going to do it. Schedule reminders in your phone. And I'll tell you, those 3 reminders that I have set in my phone, they're still in my phone, even though I'm always journaling like at the absolute latest, I'm journaling by 4 a.m. I mean, it might be like a 4:05 a.m. or something like that, but I'm generally beginning and I'm sitting down and it's 3:40, 3:30, however long it takes me to get all the vitamins and minerals and do the planner. And then I sit down and I'm journaling. But I still have those reminders going off just in case, because if there's ever a day where all hell is breaking loose and I just can't get to my journal for whatever reason, I want to make sure I get it in at some point throughout the day. So schedule a reminder on your phone, put it on there, put 1 on there, put 2 on there, put 3 on there, set it up to where you know I'm going to do this. And then the most important part, when that reminder goes off, don't snooze it, right? Like use it. How about that? Use it, don't snooze it. Make that something. So use that reminder, don't snooze the reminder. I'm sticking with that. Because what'll happen is if you snooze it, just like the alarm clock going off in the morning, like get your ass out of bed within like 2 minutes when the alarm goes off. Don't snooze and snooze and snooze. You're not doing yourself any favors with that. If you're having to hit the snooze button a million times in the morning to wake up, there's something wrong with the way you're going to bed, right? Fix the way you're going to bed so that you don't need the snooze in the morning. Same thing with this. If you're avoiding the practice of journaling because it's going to give you this clarity of thought, it will impact your life for the better. I promise you. Like I said, it's not super sexy, but it will impact your life. If you're avoiding that, that's a telling thing. What is it in your brain that you're avoiding? What is it that your mind has to say that you're running from? So when you put that reminder in your phone and it goes off, keep the appointment, write, journal, put it in the app, put it in the book, whatever it is. Most importantly, you have to let go of judgment. Like, you want to look at this almost like you're brainstorming, because what'll happen is, like, and I've tried writing in the past to where it's like, if somebody found my journal in 50 years, like the Diary of Anne Frank or something like that, I'm not living under Nazi occupation, at least not yet, right? But like, it's a for me thing. And it that brings memories or thoughts of the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, right? That's a phenomenal book, because you're literally reading the thoughts of one of the last great Roman emperors from like over 2,000 years ago, and he didn't intend it to be read by the public. Not that Anne Frank did either, right? But like, he didn't intend it to be read by the public, and you're reading it and you're realizing like, wow, this dude that was one of the last great emperors of Rome over 2,000 years ago was dealing with ungrateful people and rude people, and he was trying to better himself, and he was still dealing with short, rude, no attention span having people. And it's like, oh, okay, like, that's just kind of the way human society is, and we're still around 2,000 years later, so like, maybe things aren't as bad as we think it is. So I used to try to write for an audience when I was writing in my journal, right? And in doing so, I was always applying a filter to my writing. I was never just like letting it go. I was never letting it all out. I was always judging everything I was writing. And I think that's another reason why I never stuck with it. Whereas now it's just, like I said, it's brainstorming. It's just anything that I'm taking from my mind onto the paper. It's just blah. It's just out. Like, get it out of my brain, get it onto the paper. Again, give me clarity of thought. And you can't have clarity of thought if you're constantly censoring everything that you put down on that paper. So let go of your judgment and just brainstorm. The last thing I will say with this is, if you miss a day, like I said, it happens, right? I miss days here and there. If you miss a day, so be it. But don't allow that one day to turn into 2 days, because now when it's turned into 2 days of missing it, now you're creating a different habit. You're creating the habit of not journaling anymore. So if you miss a day, or if you go on vacation and you're just like, I'm just going to completely not do a damn thing for 7 days. Okay, great. But come back to it. Always come back to it. Even if, and again, I had stretches where I would go like months, if not years, without journaling. I always came back to it because I know there was value. I knew there was value in it, right? And I can say now, without a shadow of a doubt, it's probably one of the most powerful things I do. And for me, I started out with setting just 10 minutes every morning. And realistically, it's probably more like 12 to 13 minutes that it takes me to do. But my goal is to fill an entire sheet each day. So I'm just from the top all the way down to the margins. I mean, I'm scribbling down to like the last little half a piece of inch on the paper that I can get. If you need to start with 5 minutes because your day is that hectic, start with 5 minutes. Start with 2 minutes, right? Whatever it is. But start with something and then just build on that. So, but always come back to it and just allow yourself to write without judgment. So that is all I have for today's episode, guys. Thank you so much for listening. If anything in this episode helps you in any way, shape, and form, if you start journaling and you notice in a couple of weeks, like, wow, yeah, that really did help, like, please share this. That's all I ask. This takes time and effort. I'm not making any money off of these. Like, I'm just putting these out there because I want to grow this following. So if you found any value in this, share it. Take a screenshot of it and post it on Facebook and tag me, Andy Frisch, in it. Put it on Instagram as a screenshot and tag me. I think it's relentless_Andrew on there. So yeah, that is all I have for today's episode, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate every one of you and I appreciate your time. So this is how you find clarity of thought, through journaling, right? In an age of distraction, journaling will provide you the clarity that we all desperately need. So that's all I got for the episode, guys. Have a fantastic day and I will see you on the next one. I love you all. Talk to you later. Bye.